She said you'd come. The voice was quiet. But in the bitter wind of the cemetery, it might as well have been a scream. Ben froze mid-step. His boots sank into the damp Oregon earth, a bouquet of white chrysanthemums trembling in his gloved hands. He wasn't alone. Kneeling in front of Sarah's headstone, his Sarah was a young woman in a military uniform. Her shoulders hunched her frame, trembling. The rain had only just started a soft mist that clung to every surface like memory. But her hair was already soaked, dripping down the back of her neck in dark strands. Ben's first instinct was confusion, then unease, then something deeper, something raw. The woman didn't turn to look at him. She kept her eyes on the grave, her hand resting on the marble like it meant something, like she meant something. He cleared his throat. "Can I help you, Silence?" The wind rustled the bare trees. A raven called out in the distance. Finally, the woman spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. She used to talk about this place. Said it felt like the only place she could breathe. Ben took a cautious step forward. "You knew her." She turned then, slowly, deliberately. And in that moment, Ben's world tilted. She was young, early 20s maybe, but there was something in her eyes that didn't belong to that age. They were old eyes, war-touched eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and still managed to look you in the face. Her voice was steady now. "Sarah Walker was my mother. The earth might as well have opened beneath Ben's feet." "That's not possible," he said, more to himself than to her. Sarah didn't have. He stopped, because even as the words formed, a memory crawled up from the cellar of his mind, buried and ignored for too long. Sarah one night curled on the couch after chemo, eyes sunken, but burning with something she wouldn't name. "There are things I haven't told you," she had said. And he, like a coward in love, had whispered, "Then don't." Now standing in the rain, staring at a stranger who called Sarah. Mother Ben realized maybe he should have listened. The girl reached into her jacket and pulled out something wrapped in plastic, weathered, faded, but protected. She held it out. Ben didn't move. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said. "I just needed to see her once." He stepped forward almost without meaning to and took the bundle from her hand. It was a letter. The handwriting, her handwriting, was unmistakable. Slanted, looping with little hearts above the eyes. Sarah never outgrew that habit. Ben's voice cracked. "Where did you get this?" The woman hesitated. "She gave it to someone a long time ago. It was passed to me when it was time." Ben looked down at the envelope. On the front in faded ink were 5 words, "For Ben. Only if she comes." He looked back up. The soldier, the daughter, was already backing away. "I don't want anything," she said quickly. "I don't want your house or your pity or your answers. I wanted to meet her. And I guess I did." Ben blinked. "You're walking away?" She offered a bitter smile. "I've spent most of my life doing that. It's easier than hoping." He took one step after her. "Wait. At least tell me your name." She paused. Rain dotted her eyelashes, made her look almost unreal. "Emily," she said. "Emily Grant." Then she was gone, swallowed by the fog curling through the tombstones, like a ghost Sarah had sent to haunt him. Ben stood there, the letter growing heavier in his hand. His heart thudded against his ribs like a fist demanding to be let out. He looked down at the grave. "Sarah, what the hell did you do?" That night, Ben sat at the kitchen table long after Clara had gone to sleep upstairs. The house was quiet, too quiet. It used to be filled with music, with laughter, with Sarah humming off-key in the kitchen. Now it was just echoes. He stared at the unopened letter. His fingers trembled as he slid a knife along the top, unfolding the page inside like it might shatter. Her voice came back instantly. Not spoken, written. but alive. Ben, if you're reading this, then she found you. Or maybe you found her. Either way, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times. But how do you explain giving away a piece of your heart when you're trying to convince someone you're whole? Her name is Emily. I had her when I was 16. I didn't have a choice then. But I've thought of her every day since. She was never lost to me, only hidden. Please don't hate her. Don't hate me. I didn't leave this world with nothing. I left you the best part of me. Ben's breath hitched. He leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling like it might answer something. Then he whispered, barely audible but dead honest. I don't hate her. I just wish I'd known her. From upstairs, a small voice called out, Daddy. He wiped his eyes. Yes, sweetheart, I had a dream about Mommy. She was standing in the rain. Ben looked back at the letter. So was I, he thought. And I think she sent someone with her. The next morning, Oregon's sky was still hung low with rain clouds drizzling like grief that wouldn't let go. Ben sat in his truck, parked outside the local library, holding the letter in both hands, like it might vanish if he blinked. The heater hummed, fogging up the windows, but his focus never left Sarah's handwriting. He'd read it 10 times already. Still didn't feel real. I left you the best part of me. He ran a hand down his face, sandpaper stubble scraping against his palm. He wanted to be angry, at Sarah, at the girl, at whoever had kept this truth from him. But all he could feel was regret. Because deep down he knew he had never really asked. He had loved Sarah fiercely, but maybe he hadn't loved all of her. Not the dark corners, not the years before they met. He'd built a version of her that didn't leave room for secrets, and she in return had quietly lived with one. Ben pulled out his phone, hesitating before tapping in a number. He hadn't dialed it in over 3 years. The line rang twice before a familiar, worn voice answered. McKay Law Office. This is Helen. It's me, Ben said. Tell Paul I need to talk. Today. 20 minutes later, he was sitting across from Paul McKay, Sarah's old friend, and their family lawyer. The man looked older, less hair, more weight, but his eyes were sharp as ever. So McKay said, tapping the envelope Ben had handed him. You finally read it. You knew I delivered it. Ben's fingers curled into fists. Why didn't you say something? Paul sighed, taking off his glasses and setting them beside the steaming mug of coffee. Because she made me promise not to. She wrote that letter 2 months before she passed. Said it was only for you. Said she'd know when it was time. Ben shook his head. How the hell do you know when it's time? McKay leaned in. Because she asked me to deliver it, only if a young woman ever showed up at her grave. That was the condition. I waited 3 years. No one came. Until now. Ben sat back in the chair, hollowed out. She told you everything enough, Paul said. She got pregnant at 16. No father listed on the birth record. Gave the baby up through a closed adoption. Never spoke of it again. Until the end. Said if she couldn't find Emily before she died, she hoped Emily would find you. Ben stared at the office wall, eyes unfocused. A diploma. A photo of Paul and Sarah at a fundraiser. Years of memory staring back at him. You ever wonder why she didn't tell me? He asked, voice low. Paul didn't answer right away. When he did, it was quiet. She didn't want you to carry the weight of her pain. She already saw how hard you were struggling with your own. Ben chuckled bitterly. So instead, she left me with a stranger at her grave, and a letter that feels like a confession. No, Paul said firmly. It's not a confession. It's a gift. She's giving you the chance she never had to know Emily. Ben was silent for a long moment. Then, do you know where she is? Paul nodded. I can find out. By late afternoon, the sky had opened up again, steady rain now turning the pavement slick and silver. Ben parked near a modest rental house at the edge of town. Lights were on inside. A porch light buzzed faintly. He took a breath, climbed the steps, and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Footsteps. Then the door opened, a crack chain still on, and there she was. Emily. This time without uniform, in jeans and a hoodie, but the same eyes, the same steel beneath the surface. "You're persistent," she said. Ben forced a breath. "You dropped a grenade in my life. I figured I deserved a conversation." She hesitated, then undid the chain and opened the door wider. 5 minutes. He stepped inside, surprised at how bare the place was. A suitcase by the wall, a folded cot, a photo of a woman, probably her foster mother, on the table. It felt more like a waiting room than a home. "I don't want anything from you," she said before he could speak. "I know. I mean it. So do I." Silence. Then Emily folded her arms. "So, what do you want?" Ben looked at her, really looked. "I want to understand how the woman I loved lived a whole life before me, a life she never talked about, and I want to know how you fit into it." Emily scoffed. "You think I have answers? I spent 23 years not knowing who I came from. Then one day, I get a sealed envelope, a name and an address. That's it. No warm reunion, no fairy tale ending, just a headstone." Ben's voice cracked. "You should have had more than that." Emily looked away. "I kept thinking," she said softly, "if I'd just found her sooner. Maybe she would have wanted me." "She did want you." Emily turned sharply. Ben stepped closer, his voice steady but trembling underneath. "She wrote me a letter, told me about you. Said she thought about you every day. Said she hoped you'd find your way back." Emily blinked, jaw clenching. Ben pulled the letter from his coat and placed it on the table. "She called you the best part of her." Emily's fingers hovered above it but didn't touch, then barely audible. "She was dying, and she still thought of me." Ben nodded. "You weren't lost. You were just waiting to be found." For the first time, the wall around her cracked. A breath caught in her throat. She blinked fast, then turned away, swallowing emotion like it tasted bitter. "Why are you really here?" she whispered. Ben hesitated, then said quietly, "Because I think there's a part of her still breathing, and it's standing right in front of me." Emily's shoulders shook once, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Ben stood alone on his front porch that evening, arms crossed against the chill, staring out at the woods beyond the fence line. The sky was streaked with the last gold of sunset, but his mind was far from peaceful. He hadn't expected her to let him in again. And yet Emily had sat across from him for nearly an hour. She hadn't said much, but she'd listened. And sometimes that was louder than words. Her eyes had softened just slightly when he told her about Sarah's laugh. How it used to echo through this very porch. How she hummed Elvis songs when she thought no one was listening. And then there was that moment. When he'd said, "You weren't lost. You were just waiting to be found." She hadn't replied, but her silence had said everything. The next day, Ben stood in front of the Oregon Department of Child Welfare building. The glass doors reflected his own face back at him, older than he remembered, more tired than he wanted to admit. He walked in, heart pounding. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" He cleared his throat. "I'm looking for adoption records from 2001. A baby girl born February 12th. Her name was Emily. The mother's name was Sarah Walker." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Are you the adoptive parent?" "No," Ben said, pulling out the letter. "But I'm her husband. Sarah passed away. This is a family matter." She took the letter, read it slowly, then looked up again. "I'll check with my supervisor." Ben waited. He stared at the wall, a bulletin board full of missing kids, legal notices, smiling children in foster care. All of it suddenly felt deeply personal. 10 minutes later, the woman returned. Because the file was part of a closed adoption, it's sealed. But there's a name on record for the last known foster guardian. She handed him a card. Mrs. Lorraine Franklin, retired, RN, licensed foster parent. 1987-2015, Tualatin, Oregon. Ben read the name aloud, nodding slowly. Thank you. She was one of the good ones, the woman added. A lot of kids still send her cards. It was a 2-hour drive through rain and fog to reach the small white house nestled among pine trees. The porch had a wind chime that sang with every gust. Ben knocked, unsure what kind of reception he'd get. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 70s, small-framed with silver hair tied back in a braid. She wore an old sweater and eyes that could see through a person. You must be Ben. He blinked. How did you? She called this morning, said you might come. Said you looked like a man carrying more guilt than luggage. Ben almost laughed. Sounds about right. She opened the door. Then I suppose I'd better put on tea. Inside, the living room smelled of lemon balm and old wood. Framed photos lined the shelves, some of children, some of soldiers. In the middle was a picture of Emily, maybe 9 years old, with a gap-toothed smile and bruised knees. Ben stared. She was a handful, Lorraine said with a fond sigh, handing him a cup of steaming tea. Smart as a whip, never backed down from a fight. Once threw a boy twice her size across the playground because he kicked her rabbit. She had a rabbit. Named it. Sarah, Lorraine said with a smile. Ben's throat tightened. She never knew where the name came from. Lorraine added gently. But she was drawn to it, even as a kid. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ben asked, why didn't Sarah try to find her? Lorraine leaned back in her chair. You ever lose something so precious, the pain of looking for it becomes worse than the fear of never finding it. Ben looked down at his hands. She was just a kid, Lorraine continued. 16, scared with no support. Signed away her rights not because she didn't love that baby, but because the world told her she wasn't allowed to. She never told me, Ben murmured. We were married for 12 years. She didn't want you to see her as broken, Lorraine said. And Emily. Well, she grew up thinking she wasn't wanted at all. It's a miracle that girl still knows how to stand upright. Ben felt something in him shift. I used to think Sarah gave me all of her, he said quietly. But maybe she gave me the part that needed peace and kept the pain to herself. Lorraine looked at him, eyes softening. That's what mothers do, son. We carry the weight, so others don't have to feel it. As Ben drove back toward home, the rain had lightened, the sky bruised with early evening clouds. His mind buzzed with memories and questions. Emily had lived her whole life thinking she was a mistake. Sarah had spent hers believing she couldn't ask forgiveness for it. And now they were both here, tangled in a grief too old to bury and too fresh to ignore. That night, Clara padded into the living room in her fuzzy socks, clutching her teddy bear. Daddy, she said, can I have another story? Ben lifted her into his lap. You want the one about the flying dog again? No, she said. Tell me one about Mommy. Ben paused. He hadn't told Clara much, just that Mommy had been brave and kind and had gone to heaven when the stars needed someone to take care of them. He looked into her expectant eyes. All right, he said. Once upon a time, there was a girl who carried a secret so big she hid it inside her smile. Somewhere across town in a quiet motel room with just a cot and a duffel bag, Emily sat alone. The letter sat beside her unopened again. She couldn't sleep. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a photo, one she'd never shown anyone. A grainy image of a woman in a hospital gown holding a newborn with tired eyes, but a fierce, stubborn smile. It was the only picture she had of her mother. But now she had a name, a voice, a grave, and maybe just Maybe something more than a goodbye. The first thing Emily remembered about her childhood wasn't a face. It was a sound. The sharp metallic click of a foster home's front door, locking behind her. She must have heard it a dozen times in her life, each one closing with the same quiet finality. Like someone saying, "This isn't home." Not really. She learned early not to ask questions, not to linger, and definitely not to hope. Now, standing in front of the mirror in her motel room, she watched her own reflection like it belonged to someone else. Her uniform hung neatly on the chair. Civilian clothes felt strange, like shedding armor you'd grown too used to. She rubbed her hands together to shake off the cold. Her fingers still trembled, not from the weather, but from the meeting with Ben. His voice lingered in her ears. "You weren't lost. You were just waiting to be found." No one had ever said anything like that to her before, and he'd meant it. She could see it in his eyes, the disbelief, the pain, but also, somehow, the kindness. Emily sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the letter again. Sarah's letter. This time she opened it. Her breath caught. "Emily, I don't know if this letter will find you, but I prayed every day it might. If you're reading this, then maybe it means the world didn't forget us after all. I want you to know something first. I never gave you away because I didn't love you. I gave you away because I loved you too much to let you live the life I had back then. You deserved more than a frightened 16-year-old girl with no roof, no plan, and no idea how to raise someone as precious as you. But I never forgot you. Not once. Every birthday I lit a candle in my mind. Every time I passed a girl with a laugh like yours, I wondered, could it be? If you found Ben, I need you to know he didn't know about you. It was my secret, my sorrow. But he's a good man, the best. And if there's any part of me left in you, you'll see that too. You were never a mistake, Emily. You were the first good thing I ever did. I love you. I have always loved you." Mom. Tears welled up before she could stop them. She blinked them back, biting down hard on her knuckle. Her shoulders shook once, then twice. She didn't cry often. Years in the military had taught her how to keep it locked inside, filed away like classified data. But there was no armor for this. She folded the letter carefully, as if it might break, and placed it back in the envelope. Then she pulled on her coat and left. An hour later, Emily found herself at a small park on the edge of town. The swings creaked in the breeze. A boy ran past her, chasing a soccer ball, his father laughing behind him. She watched them for a moment, then looked away. That was never her. She sat on a bench and let the cold seep in. Her fingers traced the edge of the envelope inside her pocket like a touchstone. Then a soft voice broke her thoughts. "Excuse me. Are you Emily?" She turned. A little girl stood there, no more than 6 years old. Brown curls, bright eyes, and the kind of innocent curiosity that could only belong to a child unscarred by life. Emily blinked. "Yes, I'm Clara," the girl said. "My daddy said your name. He said you were brave." Emily froze. She knew who this was. Before she could respond, Ben appeared, jogging lightly toward them. "Clara, what did we say about running ahead?" "She's nice." Clara beamed. "She looks like Mommy." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Ben looked sheepish. "I'm sorry. She insisted we come to the park today. Didn't know you'd be here." Emily stood slowly. "You told her about me." He nodded. "Only a little. Just that you were someone special. Someone Sarah cared about. She said I look like her." Emily whispered. Ben studied her for a beat. "You do." Clara reached up suddenly and took Emily's hand. Emily flinched, but didn't pull away. "She always made my eggs with ketchup smiley faces," Clara said. "Do you like eggs?" Emily let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "I do." "Then you can sit with us," Clara declared, tugging her toward the nearby picnic table. Ben watched quietly as the two walked ahead. Over sandwiches and hot cocoa from a thermos, the conversation was light. Clara did most of the talking about school, her teddy bear named Buttons, and the way the neighbor's cat always stole her chalk. Emily listened. Really listened. At one point, Clara leaned over and asked, "Do you miss your mommy too?" Emily nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Every day. Clara reached out small fingers, brushing Emily's arm. "Then maybe we can miss them together." Ben looked away, pretending not to hear. But something in his chest cracked open and filled with warmth. He hadn't planned this. But maybe Sarah had. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily rose from the table. "I should go," she said. "But, thank you." Ben nodded. "Emily, listen, this doesn't have to end here. You don't have to disappear again. I've spent my whole life walking away, Ben. It's what I'm good at." His voice was quiet but steady. "Maybe it's time to learn something new." She hesitated, then offered a faint smile. "You sound like her." "I loved her," Ben said. "But I think I missed the part of her that was still hurting. I won't make that mistake again." Emily nodded, eyes wet. "I don't know how to be someone's family, Ben. I barely know how to be someone's friend." He stepped closer, speaking gently. "Then let's just start with this. You're not alone anymore." She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. And sometimes staying still is the bravest step of all. The air was still that night, as if the whole town had decided to hold its breath. Ben stood at the sink, washing dishes, watching the rain trace slow paths down the kitchen window. Clara was already asleep, a tangle of blankets and bedtime stories. But his mind was still somewhere in that park, at that picnic table, watching Emily hold a cup of cocoa, like it was something holy. She hadn't said much, but there were truths she hadn't spoken, and those were the ones that stayed with him. He dried his hands, picked up his phone, and stared at her number. He had it now. She'd given it to him, as if it didn't mean anything. But it did. Before he could second-guess, he typed, "You left the cocoa mug in the basket. I'm keeping it hostage until we talk again." He hovered for a second, then sent it. No reply. He didn't expect one. Across town, Emily sat, curled up on the corner of her motel bed, dressed in sweatpants and a hoodie that still smelled faintly of desert sand and antiseptic. Her duffel bag lay open on the floor, half unpacked. It had stayed like that for weeks now, half in, half out. That was how she lived. Her phone buzzed beside her. She read Ben's message, and a small, reluctant smile tugged at her lips. Then she put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Her heart felt like a room with too many doors and no locks. She had spent years building walls that were high and thick and sure, but that little girl at the park with her sticky fingers and warm hands had slipped through the cracks like sunlight. And Ben hadn't asked her to explain. He hadn't asked her to earn his patience. He just showed up and stayed. That was new. The next day, Emily stood in front of the gate to Fort Gibson, her old base. It felt surreal walking across pavement she once marched on daily. She still knew the rhythm by heart. Inside, she met with Captain Ramirez, her former commanding officer. A woman built like iron and kindness in equal parts. Emily Grant Ramirez said, rising from behind her desk. "Didn't think I'd see you back here so soon." "I just needed some closure," Emily replied. Ramirez gestured for her to sit. Word came down. "Your reassignment orders are ready. If you still want the Japan post, it's yours. 2-year deployment. Fast-track medical unit." Emily nodded slowly. "When would I leave 10 days? Ramirez tilted her head. "But you didn't come here just to ask." "That did you?" Emily hesitated. "Ma'am, have you ever felt like the person you were when you joined the military isn't the person you are when you leave it?" Ramirez didn't blink. Every damn day. I used to think if I wore this uniform long enough, I'd become someone worth remembering, Emily said. But lately, I'm not sure who I'm trying to convince. Ramirez folded her hands on the desk. You've already earned your legacy, Grant. The question is, what kind of life are you ready to live when no one's watching? Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. That evening, Ben was reading Charlotte's Web to Clara for the 100th time. She was halfway to sleep, eyes heavy when she mumbled, "Is Emily gonna be part of our family?" Now, Ben blinked. "What makes you ask that?" "Because Mommy sent her," Clara said simply, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Ben stared at his daughter, heart caught between awe and ache. What if she doesn't want to be part of our family? Clara shrugged. Then we just love her until she's sure. And that he realized was the purest kind of wisdom. Emily knocked on his door the next day just after sunset. Ben opened it to find her standing there wet from the drizzle, her army duffel slung over her shoulder. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. Voice low. Ben stepped aside. "Then you came to the right place." Inside, she dropped the bag and stood awkwardly near the entryway. "I saw my old captain today," she said. "They want to deploy me again. Japan. 2 years." Ben didn't move. "And what do you want? I don't know," she admitted. "I've always just gone where I'm told. Did the job. Followed the orders." He nodded. And now Emily looked up, and for the first time her eyes weren't guarded. They were bare. "Now there's a little girl with your smile and my mother's eyes. And I don't want her to forget my face." Ben swallowed hard. "Then stay." "I don't know how," she whispered. "I don't know how to stay, Ben. I only know how to leave before someone else does." He stepped forward slowly, carefully. "Then let this be the first place you don't run from." Silence stretched between them. Then Emily nodded just once, and it felt like a cathedral bell ringing in the quiet. That night, she slept on the couch. Ben didn't press. Clara had drawn her a picture before bedstick figures of the 3 of them, holding hands under a rainbow. Emily had stared at it for a long time before whispering, "No one's ever drawn me into a family before." Ben had replied softly, "You've been in ours from the beginning. You just didn't know it yet." In the quiet dark after Clara had fallen asleep and Emily's breathing had steadied in the next room, Ben sat alone on the back porch. The stars blinked through scattered clouds. The air smelled like pine and old memories. He whispered toward the sky, "She's here, Sarah. And I swear to you, I'm not letting her go." Emily stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection in the quiet morning light. She touched the faint scar on her collarbone, a remnant from Syria, a piece of shrapnel that never quite left. But it wasn't the physical ones that stayed with her. It was the kind you couldn't see, the ones that whispered in the dark, "You're not enough. You're only here because someone left. You don't belong." Down the hall, she heard Clara's laughter bubble up through the floorboards. A few thumps, then the sound of Ben pretending to be a dinosaur. His growl was pitiful. His daughter's giggle was the cure for everything wrong with the world. Emily smiled despite herself. She splashed cold water on her face and stepped into the hallway, where sunlight cut through the window like a golden thread, leading her toward something she wasn't sure how to name yet. Ben was in the kitchen flipping pancakes badly. Batter dripped from the edges of the pan. "You ever seen a man fight a spatula and lose?" he asked as she walked in. Emily folded her arms. "This is a crime scene?" "Guilty," he said, flipping one onto a plate and sliding it across the counter. "Survivable, though." Clara climbed onto the bar stool beside her. "Daddy makes smiley face pancakes, but the eyes always slide off." Artistic expression Ben defended. "I call it emotional breakfast." Emily looked down at her pancake. The syrup smile was crooked. The blueberries had definitely fallen, but for some reason it made her chest ache. She sat. Clara leaned close. "Are you staying here forever now?" Ben froze. Emily didn't answer right away. She glanced at Ben, then back at Clara. "I don't know about forever, sweetheart, but I'm staying for now." Clara considered that, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, as long as you're here for the part where Daddy burns toast. That's my favorite." Ben threw a towel at her, laughing. Emily joined in, and for the first time in a long time, the sound didn't feel foreign in her throat. Later that afternoon, Ben took Emily for a walk behind the house, where the woods opened into a quiet clearing. The trees swayed gently, casting slow-moving shadows on the ground, like they were remembering something together. They walked in silence until Emily spoke. "Do you ever wonder who you'd be if none of it happened?" Ben kept his eyes forward. "You mean if Sarah hadn't gotten sick? If she hadn't had a daughter before me?" She nodded. "If life had gone according to some plan you once believed in." He paused, then said, "I used to. All the time, especially the first year after she passed." And now he looked at her. "Now, I think maybe the plan was never the point. Maybe it was the people who showed up when everything fell apart, and stayed." Emily stopped walking. Ben turned. She was staring at the trees, arms crossed, voice tight. "Sometimes I think I showed up too late, like I missed every train I was supposed to catch, and now I'm just loitering in someone else's station." Ben stepped toward her. "You didn't miss anything." "I did," she said, sharper now. "I missed her. I missed 12 years of knowing she was alive, of birthdays, of bedtime stories, of things that will never happen now." Her hands were trembling. "I thought if I found her grave, I'd feel closure," she said. "But all I feel is guilt, for not being there, for not asking sooner, for existing at all." Ben didn't speak immediately. He let the silence breathe. "Then Emily, Sarah didn't keep you from her because she was ashamed. She kept you from the world because she was scared the world wouldn't be kind enough for you." She looked at him, tears brimming now. "And you? What if you're not kind enough?" Ben's voice broke a little. "Then I'll spend every day trying to be." She covered her mouth with one hand, turning away. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to earn a place here, Emily. You already are a part of this family. That's not up for debate." She shook her head. "I don't know how to be someone's anything." He stepped beside her, eyes soft. "Then let's be something together. No names, no titles. Just people who don't run anymore." She didn't answer, but she didn't step away. That was enough. That evening they sat around the fireplace. Clara insisted on marshmallows, though no one had the heart to roast them. Instead, she curled into Emily's side, her eyes heavy. "You smell like outside," she murmured. Emily chuckled. "Is that bad?" "No," Clara mumbled, half asleep. "You smell like trees and bravery." Ben looked over from the couch, heart so full it ached. He watched as Emily carefully brushed a lock of hair from Clara's forehead, her fingers delicate and unsure. "She looks like Sarah," Emily whispered. Ben nodded. "She's got your fire, though." "My fire. You said it once, that you only know how to leave." He smiled gently. "Takes fire to do that. Takes more fire to stay." She looked down at Clara again, and this time she didn't feel like a visitor. She felt like she belonged. After Clara went to bed, Emily lingered in the living room. Ben poured them each a cup of tea. They sat across from each other as the fire crackled, casting warm light across the hardwood floor. She stared into her cup. "I'm scared," she admitted. Ben nodded. "Me too. I don't want to replace her. You're not. And I don't want to lose this. Not now. Not when it finally feels like something's right." He looked up at her eyes clear. Then don't run. Don't replace. Just be here. That's all anyone's asking. She blinked, and the quiet between them softened. Not empty. Not uncertain. Just the space between two broken people trying to learn how to be whole. Together, the first snow fell quietly overnight, blanketing the town in white like some divine reset button had been pressed. Emily stood by the window that morning, coffee in hand, watching the snowflakes drift under the porch light. Clara's boots were by the door. One still held a tiny leaf she'd stuffed in there last week, calling it her lucky treasure. Ben stepped into the room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "She's still out cold," he said with a yawn. Woke up at 3 a.m. convinced she heard Santa on the roof. Emily smiled. "Smart kid. She's a Whitaker. We don't do anything quietly." He moved next to her, their shoulders nearly touching as they stared out into the muted white world. For a long moment, there was only silence between them. Comfortable. Safe. Then Ben spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said, about missing the train." Emily looked at him wary. "You didn't miss anything, Em. Sometimes life just makes you take the long road. Doesn't mean you didn't arrive right on time." She held his gaze for a beat, and for once didn't look away. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "Then let me help you." Later that afternoon, Emily opened Sarah's old cedar box, the one Ben had found in the attic weeks after she passed. Inside were mementos, an old concert ticket stub, faded Polaroids, a baby blanket, and journals full of slanted handwriting and half-finished thoughts. Buried under them was a small bundle of letters, unsent, all addressed to Emily Grant. Her hands trembled as she opened one. "Sweetheart, it's your birthday today. You're 7. I don't know where you are or if you're happy, but I hope you are. I hope someone made you pancakes with whipped cream and let you open presents before breakfast. I don't deserve to know you, but I love you, and I always will." Mom Emily clutched the paper to her chest. The tears came fast and without permission. Downstairs, Ben heard the creak in the ceiling and hesitated. He didn't want to intrude, but something told him she didn't need space. She needed anchoring. He climbed the stairs, slowly pausing at her door. It was ajar. She was sitting on the floor, knees to her chest, surrounded by the box's contents. Her face was streaked with tears, but there was no shame in it. Ben didn't speak. He just sat beside her. After a minute, she handed him a letter. She wrote to me. Every year. Never sent a single one. Ben read in silence. His throat tightened. "You know what hurts most," Emily said. "It's not the letters. It's realizing she was never the woman I resented. She was the mother I missed." Ben turned to her. "She would have been proud of you, not just for surviving, but for showing up, for choosing to stay." Emily wiped her face, voice hoarse. "What if I don't know how to live without all this pain? What if it's the only thing I've ever been good at carrying?" Ben's voice dropped low, tender. "Then maybe it's time someone carried some of it with you." She looked at him like she was trying to memorize his face, and maybe she was, because no one had ever said that to her before. That evening, the three of them decorated the Christmas tree together. Clara was in charge of ornaments. This mostly meant placing everything on the bottom third of the tree and declaring it perfect. Emily helped string the lights, trying not to smile every time Ben untangled a knot, like it was a military-grade threat. "You know," she said, "holding a string of lights, you'd make a terrible soldier." Ben grinned. "And you'd make a terrible handyman?" Clara inserted herself between them. "I think you both make the best family." Silence. Then Emily whispered, "We're trying kiddo." That night, after Clara was asleep and the tree glowed softly in the corner, Emily stood by the fireplace holding one of Sarah's unsent letters. Ben watched her from the couch. "You thinking of burning it?" he asked. She shook her head. I'm thinking of answering it. He waited. She turned toward him, eyes brighter than he'd ever seen. I want to stay, Ben. Not just in this house, but in this life. Yours. Clara's. Whatever it becomes. I want to be here. His breath caught. Then slowly, like gravity had finally done its work, he stood closed the distance and took her hands in his. Then stay, he said. No conditions. No expiration date. Just stay. Emily leaned her forehead against his, the unsent letter still in one hand. Her fingers clutched his like a promise in the making. Later, long after the fire died and the snow outside thickened, Ben found a blank piece of stationery on the kitchen counter. On it, in Emily's handwriting, were the first lines of a new letter. Dear Mom, I finally found my way home. And it's nothing like I imagined. It's better. The storm came in sudden and sharp. Wind howled against the windows like a warning. Power flickered, then went out completely. Emily stood in the middle of the living room, her heartbeat matching the rhythm of the thunder outside. Clara clung to her leg, whispering, "It's okay. Daddy says storms don't last forever." Ben appeared with flashlights and extra blankets, calm despite the chaos. "I guess we're camping inside tonight," Clara squealed, forgetting her fear. "Can we make a tent, like a real one?" Ben grinned. "You read my mind, sweetheart." Emily smiled too, but something about the darkness gnawed at her. It always did. 20 minutes later, the living room had transformed. Chairs pushed together, sheets draped like sails in a storm. A flashlight rested inside the tent, casting warm shadows that danced on the ceiling. Clara had fallen asleep inside her head on Emily's lap. Ben sat nearby, watching them in the soft glow. "She feels safe with you," he said quietly. Emily stroked Clara's hair. "She's the first person who ever looked at me and didn't see a problem to fix." Ben's voice softened. "She doesn't want you to be fixed. She just wants you to stay." Emily didn't answer for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Sometimes I still feel like I'm on patrol, like I have to stay alert or everything will fall apart." Ben nodded. "That doesn't go away overnight. But you don't have to carry that alone anymore." She met his eyes. "Do you really believe someone like me can build something real after everything I've done? Everything I've lost?" His gaze didn't waver. "Yes, because you're still here, and that means you haven't given up." Emily's throat tightened. "Every place I've lived felt temporary," she said, "even the ones with walls and locks. But this," she looked around, the couch with the worn armrest, the crayon drawings pinned to the fridge, the faint scent of pancakes still lingering in the air. "This feels like something that would hurt to lose." Ben leaned in. "That's how you know it's real." The storm raged on, but inside the quiet grew warm. They sat in the stillness, the weight between them no longer fear, but possibility. "I used to write letters to a future I didn't think would come," Emily said suddenly. Ben looked at her, waiting. One of them started with, "If I ever get to love someone without losing everything in the process, I'll know I made it home." Her voice cracked on the last word. Ben moved beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "You're here now, Em. You made it." She closed her eyes, her forehead resting against his. And in that moment, there was no war, no silence, no fear. Just breath. Just closeness. Just now. The next morning, the sun spilled over snow-covered branches. Birds chirped like nothing had happened at all. Inside the tent of blankets, Clara woke first. "Are we alive?" she whispered dramatically. Emily smiled. "Barely." Clara giggled, then crawled into her lap. "You're warm." Ben appeared with hot cocoa and 2 mugs of coffee. "We survived," he declared. "No power. No internet. But plenty of marshmallows. Emily raised a brow. So basically a primitive existence. Clara jumped up. Can we build a snowman now? Ben looked out the window. Only if your snowman wears socks. It's freezing. They bundled up and trudged into the yard, laughter echoing as they rolled snow into uneven, wobbly shapes. Clara insisted the snowman have eyebrows made of twigs and declared him Sir Crunch-a-Lot. Emily couldn't remember the last time she laughed this much. Maybe never. Later, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned peach, Clara made a snow angel and whispered, "I think Mommy would like it here." Emily's breath caught. Ben met her gaze across the yard. He didn't say anything, but he didn't have to. Because they both knew it was true. That night after Clara was tucked in and the world had quieted, Emily found Ben on the back porch, staring up at the stars. "You ever wonder if she watches us?" she asked. "All the time," Ben said without turning, "especially when things feel too good to be real." Emily stepped closer. "Do you think she'd approve?" Ben turned to her, eyes full. "I think she left room in my heart for someone like you." Emily's chest ached in the best way. "That's the thing about grief," she said. "You think it's about endings. But sometimes, it's the doorway to something new." Ben reached for her hand, and this time she didn't flinch. Inside on the nightstand, Emily placed one of Sarah's old unsent letters back into the box. But beside it, she added a new one. Handwritten. Fresh. "Dear Future, I don't know what comes next, but I know who I want beside me when it arrives." The mailbox groaned as Emily pulled it open. A stack of holiday flyers bills and one hand-addressed envelope sat inside. It wasn't addressed to her. It wasn't even addressed to Ben. It was written in Sarah's delicate cursive. A name on the front, "To my husband. Open if you're ever lost." Emily froze. Her fingers trembled around the edges. She knew she shouldn't open it. She knew some doors are better left shut. But something deeper said, "This wasn't meant to be buried." She took it inside. Ben was in the garage fixing a loose piece of Clara's sled. Emily stood in the kitchen, heart thudding the envelope unopened on the table. When he came in dusting snow from his shoulders, she turned. "I found something," she said. He saw her face, then the envelope. He went still. "I didn't know there were any left," he whispered. "She must have hidden it in one of the old Christmas boxes. I wasn't looking for it, I swear." Ben didn't answer. Then he sat down. "I don't know if I can read it," he said quietly. "But I think I need to." Emily slid the letter toward him and stepped back, giving him space. But before she could leave the room, he reached for her hand. "No. Stay. Please." He opened it slowly, like it might break in his hands. Her voice returned through ink and memory. "Ben, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're still here, which is exactly how I hoped it would be. I know you're probably trying to hold everything together because that's what you do. You fix things, you save people, even when it's breaking you apart. But love, listen to me now, because I need you to hear this loud and clear. You don't have to be alone to be strong." Ben covered his mouth. Emily sat beside him, silent. "I don't know what your life looks like now. I don't know if Clara still tries to put ketchup on everything, or if you finally stopped pretending to like jazz just because I did. But I hope you're laughing again. I hope you found someone who sees your softness, not just your strength. And if she's reading this with you, tell her thank you. From me. For loving you the way you deserve." Tears blurred Ben's vision. His chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Emily's hand gripped his tighter. He kept reading. "Grief will lie to you. It'll whisper that moving on means forgetting. But that's not true. Moving on means choosing to carry love forward instead of carrying loss. So if your heart has found room again, Let it. It was never meant to stay locked away. With all my love forever, Sarah. The room was so quiet, the fire in the hearth sounded like it was holding its breath. Ben leaned back in the chair, the letter resting on his lap. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red, but clear. She gave me permission. Emily nodded slowly. She gave you freedom, and she gave you to me. That broke her. Tears slid down her cheeks, unashamed. She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. His arms came around her without hesitation. I don't know what I did to deserve either of you, she whispered. Ben kissed her forehead, voice thick. You showed up. You stayed. That's more than enough. Later, after Clara had gone to bed, and the letter had been folded with care and placed back in Sarah's cedar box, Ben and Emily sat by the fireplace, quiet in the way only two people who've shared something sacred can be. Emily stirred her tea, then asked, Do you think we ever stop missing the people we lose? Ben shook his head. No, but I think we stop being afraid to feel joy because they're gone. Emily stared into the flames. She could have hated me, you know, for being her secret. Her mistake. She didn't, Ben said, certain. She protected you, and she prayed you'd find your way back. Emily exhaled. She didn't just love you, Ben added. She loved the version of you she never got to meet. I hope I'm becoming that person. He smiled softly. You already are. Outside, the snow had stopped. The moonlit blanket it left behind shimmered like a second chance. Inside, something deeper than warmth settled between them. It wasn't just love. It was grace. It was the moment when sorrow no longer held all the power. Before bed, Emily stood at the edge of Clara's room. The little girl lay sprawled out, arms flung wide, breathing easy. Ben came up beside her. She always sleeps like she's holding the whole world, Emily whispered. She is, Ben said. She just doesn't know it's already holding her back. Emily smiled. You're a good dad. He looked at her quiet. Then I think I'm ready to be more than that again. She turned to him, heart thudding. Are you saying Ben took her hands? I'm saying I love you, and I'm not afraid to say it anymore. Emily stepped closer. Then let's stop waiting for permission from the past. And as they kissed, the house no longer felt like a place they shared. It felt like a home they had built. Together. It started with a cough, then another. By morning, Clara's cheeks were flushed, her forehead warm, and her voice barely above a whisper. Emily sat beside her bed, damp cloth in hand, brushing hair from her temple. I don't want to miss the Christmas play, Clara murmured, eyes glassy. Emily kissed her forehead. You're the star, sweet pea. The play can wait. But Daddy says the show must go on. Emily smiled through the worry. Well, Daddy's never seen what happens when a star gets too tired to shine. Clara chuckled weakly, curling toward her. Ben appeared in the doorway holding a tray with soup and crackers. His face was tight with concern, but his voice was calm. Doctor says it's just the flu. Rest and fluids. He set the tray down, eyes locking with Emily's. No words, just the weight of shared fear between two people who couldn't bear to lose another piece of family. Over the next 3 days, they barely left Clara's side. They took turns reading books, wiping sweat, whispering reassurances that it would pass. And slowly, it did. On the 4th morning, Clara woke up asking for pancakes. Emily nearly cried from relief. As Ben flipped batter in the kitchen, she wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his back. He paused. You scared me, she whispered. You and me both, he said. I haven't prayed that hard since Sarah. Emily tightened her hold. I kept thinking, I don't want to just be passing through. I want to build something that stays. Ben turned to face her, eyes soft. Then let's build it, together. That afternoon, while Clara napped on the couch, Ben led Emily to the backyard. Snow had melted into soft patches, revealing the earth beneath damp, muddy, but alive. "I want to show you something," he said. Near the tree line stood a small wooden bench. It looked handmade, carved with initials, B++C. "I built this when Clara was born," Ben said, "back when everything still felt possible. After Sarah died, I couldn't bring myself to sit here again." Emily ran her fingers over the carving. "You kept it anyway." Ben nodded. "Because hope's a stubborn thing. It doesn't go away even when you tell it to." He pulled something from his jacket pocket. Not a ring. Not yet. A folded piece of paper. He handed it to her. "What I want if I ever learn to love again. A partner who stays. Someone who knows broken doesn't mean unworthy. Someone who can love a child that isn't hers. Someone who doesn't leave when the weather turns or the silence grows. Someone who chooses us every day." Emily's hands trembled as she read it. "You wrote this?" she asked. Ben nodded. "After Sarah. After a long night with Clara and nothing but grief for company." Emily looked up. "You wrote me. Before you knew me. Maybe I was waiting for you without knowing it." She swallowed hard. "So what are you asking?" Ben smiled, hesitant, vulnerable, in the way only a man with everything to lose can be. "I'm asking if you want to make this official. No rings, no rush. Just a life." "A life," she echoed. "Yeah. One that includes soccer games and burnt pancakes and making a mess of Christmas every year." "And what if I mess up?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Ben stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. "Then we clean it up, together." "That's the deal." Emily blinked fast, tears rising. "I never thought anyone would ask me to stay. Not like this." "I'm not asking you to stay," Ben said gently. "I'm asking you to build something that's yours too, so we stop surviving and start living exactly." She smiled through the tears. "Then yes, I'm in." That night, they told Clara. She was still sleepy-eyed, still wrapped in her blanket, but when Emily said the words, "I think we're becoming a family," her eyes widened like stars. "You mean, forever kind of family?" Clara asked. Emily nodded. "If that's okay with you." Clara flung herself into her arms. "I hoped. I really, really hoped." Ben's voice came from behind them, soft and cracked with joy. "So did I, honey. So did I." Later, Emily stood in the kitchen watching the snow begin to fall again. A quiet peace wrapped itself around the house, not the absence of storms, but the presence of something stronger. Love. Real. Messy. Healing. She pulled out a fresh piece of paper and began to write. "Dear Sarah." He didn't fall apart. He built something beautiful. And somehow, I got to be part of it. Thank you for loving him first. Thank you for making space for me to love him next. I promise I'll protect everything you left behind. I promise I'll stay. She folded the letter and placed it in the cedar box beside Sarah's final one. Then she turned off the lights and headed upstairs toward the room where her life was waiting. The spring sun rose slow and golden, casting long shadows across the porch. It had been 3 months since Emily moved in. Not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. Inside the old farmhouse, life had taken on a new rhythm. There were still dishes in the sink socks that never matched, and Clara's trail of glitter glue accidents across every surface. But now there was laughter too. Now there were quiet mornings, with warm coffee and warmer hands. Now there were second chances blooming where silence used to grow. Emily stood by the window, tying her hair back in a loose ponytail, watching Clara chase a butterfly in the yard. Ben stepped beside her, with 2 mugs in hand. "You know," he said, "if someone had told me a year ago I'd wake up to a soldier, a 7-year-old with strong opinions on toast, and a life that feels whole, I'd have laughed. Emily took her cup. And now, he grinned. Now I'm just trying to remember how I ever lived without it. That evening, the three of them stood at the edge of the backyard. The spring air was thick with the scent of earth and lilacs. Clara held a wooden stake with a small sign, Whitaker Garden. Love grows here. Ben handed Emily a shovel. It's tradition. New beginnings start with digging in the dirt. Emily raised an eyebrow. Is that a metaphor, or just a really poetic way to get me to do yard work? Ben winked. Why not both? They dug a small hole together, Clara squealing every time they uncovered a wriggling worm. Into the ground went a young tree, just a sapling. Now, but full of promise. Its roots wrapped in soil and hope. Is this how families start? Emily asked softly. Ben looked at her. No. This is how they grow. Later, after Clara had gone to bed, after the stories and the snoring and the tucking in, Emily found Ben on the porch, looking out over the land he once feared would always carry the echo of loss. She slipped her hand into his. He didn't look at her right away. Do you remember the day I found you at the cemetery? I remember thinking you were the last person I expected, she said. And the first person I couldn't walk away from. Ben turned, now full eyes meeting hers. I think Sarah knew. I think that's why she left that letter. Not just for me, but for you. Emily nodded. She gave us both permission to live again. A quiet settled between them, warm, reverent. Then Ben took something from his jacket pocket. Not velvet, not fancy. Just a simple silver ring tied to a piece of twine. This isn't about ceremony, he said. It's about choosing. Every day. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Emily stared at it then at me. And what if I'm still figuring it out? Ben's voice was steady. Then I'll wait. I'll walk beside you every mile of it. Because loving you is the easiest decision I make every day. Emily's throat tightened. You never asked me to be anyone else. You never had to be. She reached out and took the ring, sliding it onto her thumb like a silent promise. No big speech, no grand gesture, just the quiet certainty of two people who had seen the worst and chose love anyway. The next morning, Clara burst into the kitchen, hair wild and barefoot as usual. Are we still a family today? Emily bent down, kissed her nose. Even more than yesterday. Clara beamed. Good. Because I drew a picture of us on the moon, and I want to make it real someday. Ben chuckled. Better pack snacks. They laughed. Together. That weekend they hosted a small gathering. Nothing fancy. Just a few neighbors, warm pie, lemonade, and too many folding chairs. Emily found herself seated beside Ben, her hand on his knee, listening as someone asked, So, how did you two meet? Ben smirked. At a cemetery. Real cheerful stuff. Emily leaned in, smiling. It's where we buried our grief and found something worth digging up. A hush fell over the table, followed by the kind of laughter that only comes after pain has been acknowledged and released. That night, after everyone had gone home and the stars stretched endlessly overhead, Emily stood alone beneath the tree they planted. She whispered a final letter into the wind. Dear past, thank you for shaping me, but I'm no longer yours. I'm rooted now. In this home, in this love, in this life. I've stopped running. I've stopped surviving. I'm growing. And for the first time, I'm free. And maybe that's what real love is. Not something perfect. Not something planned. But something brave enough to begin again even when life has broken you once before. What about you? Where are you watching from, Sorfer? Have you ever witnessed or lived a story of second chances like this? Let us know in the comments. We read every word. And your story might just inspire someone else today. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of healing hope and humanity from our channel. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We're honored to share these stories with you. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in love.